quiet, or is it just me?
Phase 3 WordPress Enigmatic Gutenverse.
The graphic is important today, folks.
It is. I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at jasontucker.blog.
Oh, hey, I'm Say Reed, and I'm around. If you're in WordPress Slack, I'm at Say Reed Media. You've probably seen me around.
And y'all know who it is. It's your boy Jason Cosper, aka Fat Mullenweg, back at it again on the world's most influential WordPress podcast.
Speaking of that podcast, go over subscribe to it. We'd really appreciate it. You can find us where all the great podcasts are, and you can go hang out with us in Discord.
Come into our Discord.
Links are in the description down below.
Come
click
and chat with us.
Click the bell and subscribe and, you know, all the fun stuff.
I'm going to go in and add icons to all the Discord channels.
Please do.
I just want you to know that's coming in version 1.0000001 of the Discord. Hey, we have a guest
on the show.
Yeah, not only do we have a guest, but we are in a special. We have a special guest, and we are doing a special show for our special guest.
We are,
because we're on like literally the opposite sides of the planet. Is really, I think,
pretty dang close to it.
Yeah, I was trying to actually calculate that out. I was like, where is the opposite side? I don't know. Is it in
Nairobi, Kenya is where it is for us.
Is it?
Yeah, my son was over there, and he was directly on the other side of the world.
I've been there. Fun fact. Anyway, so our guest tonight is Lesley Sim, and I've wanted to have you on the show for so long, Lesley, and I'm so glad that we were able to have you on to talk about something that is so important.
Yes.
Phase 3. So you can introduce yourself. Sorry, I'm just so excited.
How about it?
Rambling.
I'm Lesley. I live in Singapore, apparently not the opposite side of the world.
It's relative, though.
Yeah, kind of the opposite side of the world. I run Newsletter Glue, which is a WordPress plugin. It connects to your email service providers like MailChimp, ActiveCampaign. We connect to over a dozen email service providers and allow you to write your newsletters from WordPress using the block editor, and you can write, publish, manage your newsletters from there. Saves a lot of time and also lets you leverage all of your monetization, SEO strategies that you're doing for your site onto your newsletters, which were previously just kind of hidden in inboxes.
And then you have a built-in archive also.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not just that's like my favorite. It's like content once and then everywhere.
Yes. And also you can put your paywalls, do all the things to it.
And I found out that you also do a podcast. You probably do multiple podcasts and I don't know about it, but one in particular that I've heard about just today was one that you do with Matt. Matt Cromwell, right? Tell me about that real quick before we totally jump into this.
Did you say Matt Cromwell?
Yeah.
Matt is the most
he's a
lovely person, and he does everything, and I just kind of appear.
That's like what I do.
Hey, Matt, I see you. Matt. These losers don't do anything. It's all me.
Yeah, he's great. So that's a show called Glam That Plugin, and
love it.
Basically we help. We have a whole people sign up to get their plugins glammed, and so Matt talks about the README, so like the description of the on the repo, and also like pricing strategies, and then I go through their homepage and also their plugin settings and stuff like that, and like their like conversion flow, like upgrade conversion flow. So we like go through all the details.
Wow,
it's still early days. I think we have like 1 or 2 episodes out so far.
That sounds really fun.
Yeah, I'll have links in the description for you guys to check out. It looks like such a fun setup, and
it's
such
like
a cool idea.
An hour of nerding out.
I don't know anyone who would like that.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like a makeover show, but for plugins.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So
That's lovely.
Cool.
I've always wanted to do that for like websites, but like it's way too involved. So like,
Yeah.
I like the focus of plugin. Like that's a really like nice niche. So we'll have to have you on to talk about that. in the
Thank
future.
you for introducing us to it. I appreciate it.
So
phase 3.
Yeah,
Shall
phase
we?
3. You had some. So there's been a lot of talk about phase 3 over the past couple of weeks. I don't really know when those. It's just the past couple of weeks, right? That just came out, somewhat relatively recent. And there's always been talk about phase 3 since we heard about phase 1. There's the 4 phases, and so it's like the fall of Gutenberg, like seasonally, not like the fall of Rome.
Right.
Right.
I mean, unless that's prophetic.
Someone's gonna like take a screen recording of you saying that and just like post it everywhere.
It's like when we all found out that Web 2.0 was a thing and we didn't realize we were in Web 1.0.
Oh,
or that HTML had versions. Who knew?
Oh, English is so fun. The autumn of WordPress. There we go. Autumn of Gutenberg. Anyway, the collaboration, right? That's been kind of turned into the watchword for was the watchword for phase 3 and has now been a little bit amended by executive director of the WordPress project, Josefa Hayden Chumpom. I can't say her last name.
Champosi.
Thank you. I really worked on that. Damn. I just don't like calling people by just their first name. It's weird. It's like they're like anyway. More about workflows is what she was kind of it's being redefined more in that direction. But I think that even more interesting is that in the phase 3 article that Matthias, that someone can pronounce his last name for me.
Yep.
I think that'd be great. Wrote recently, where you had some really awesome comments. They brought up the admin, and that had not really been necessarily on the horizon before. So I thought that was really interesting in terms of sort of shifting the scope, so it's not just about collaborative writing. But we don't have to talk about that, because what I really want to talk about are your comments on that post. So can you tell us a little bit about what you were talking about on there?
Yeah. So let's rewind a bit and go big picture. So Matthias,
you're driving, have at it.
Ventura.
You got it.
Recently, March 25th, posted on the Make WordPress blog about phase 3, kind of like the big picture, what the plans are, what's happening, what are the big themes that they're going to cover. Or maybe I shouldn't use the word themes. What are the big things that they're going to cover?
What patterns do you see? I mean,
yeah, so like the things that they're going to cover in phase 3. This, includes publishing flows, real-time collaboration, admin design, something called library, which is a bit vague.
I have lots to say on the library component. Long-time listeners of the show will know. I see you, Courtney, looking at me.
Yep.
And yeah, so like those are all the things. And since this is kind of like big picture here, the things you're going to work on for phase 3, I thought I'd just kind of chip in and talk about a thing that I've been trying to slip into the
dialogue, the general.
Slip into the dialogue.
Yeah.
Of the people that make WordPress.
Yeah.
And that is about kind of taking a user first or use case first approach. So I'm getting an echo. Is that me or...
Give it a shot. Maybe it'll say.
Yeah. Okay, it's done. Yeah, and so it's kind of like taking a use case first approach to building stuff, just because I guess that's how a lot of modern software is built these days, and I think it's kind of good. And I think WordPress being used by so many millions of people, it's great if we could adopt that as well. rather
Yes.
than kind of the way that we've kind of been doing stuff in the past.
I think that what really struck me about this point specifically was that and I know sort of the larger answer to this, but it's not clear to me, someone who follows along to the community, where these features are actually being pulled from, right? And it's like, you actually made a comment, I think, where it's like, if we knew that 50% of the user base was like, really struggling on the
needed this specific thing,
then then it would make that not less negotiable necessarily, but less of a like, why are you doing that? Because we would have the answer. Like, we are doing this because of this. And right now it feels like it's sort of designing in the abstract for this sounds like there's some features that should happen. But
wouldn't it be cool if?
Yeah, but it doesn't take into consideration, the multitude of ways. Like, WordPress has been like, its whole thing is, right, it's expandable. So it's been expanded. We have done the thing that it says that it can do, and we have expanded on it. And I feel like this process, and I say this as someone who's currently a very active contributor and, sees all the work that everyone does, but it happens in a vacuum, a weird vacuum, because the community is like this core, and then around it is the ecosystem. And the ecosystem knows about the community in the core of the Make community. But the Make community, like, are we just ignoring the rest of it? Like, there's this plugin called Publish Press, right? I'm sure we've talked about it on the show before. They have like a bunch of different mini plugins that do revisions and different things that are literally part of this kind of this phase. So it feels like we're solving problems that have already been solved, and not looking, like, instead of standing on the shoulders of our own community, we're like just building the same ladder. Like, we won't, like, ignoring what's happening around us. It's just, I don't understand who we're building for.
In the case of Publish Press, like, Steve is a friend, and like I host a different podcast with him.
Flex.
I didn't realize that I was doing a bunch of podcasts, Jason, until you said that, and I was like, oh yeah.
You just thought they were meetings, and then they start getting recorded, and then you're like, what? I said that in confidence. What happened? As, like,
fun projects that I haven't been promoting at all.
I also relate to that, incidentally. Not promoting your podcast? Why would anyone do that?
But yeah, so like, I think it's fine if you want to build something, because some things really should be in core rather than be a plugin. And like, maybe there's a case for these features to be in core. Again, like, we don't know because they haven't given us a use case, yet. But assuming there is, like, the other thing aside from that bugs me is, I bet they haven't even talked to Steve about it, right? Like, to me, the first step should be like, oh, there's a guy with like hundreds of thousands of users who does this exact thing. Maybe we should ask him what he thinks should be in core versus a plugin. He's probably going to have some really good ideas because he's done this for many years. And like, let's figure out how to make this happen, right? That seems really reasonable, right?
I think that there's a reason, like, it's this weird tension, again, between the community and the ecosystem, because on one hand, this person has solved this problem, right? And I mean, honestly, I'm actively using it. I literally am helping a client use the revisions plugin. Like, I did it today. Like, this is not like an abstract use case. And I totally distracted myself now because I was thinking about my client. I was like, oh yeah, I got to do that.
Revisions plugin is what you're talking about. Revisions.
Yeah, the revision plugin is a business, right? It's a solution that's out there. And I think there might be some tension between the idea that, like, that person's doing it for profit, right? And then the core code isn't. So maybe on a certain level, there is like not wanting to copy a product that is a commercial product. But I think this is part of kind of just something that we're facing because it's taken a long time to develop core. There have been third-party solutions that have been set up and developed for all of these different use cases.
Yeah.
And those are people's businesses and livelihoods. And there's this weird, like, are we, instead of incorporating it and finding a way to like almost absorb it or like make it part of, this is so good, we need to like kind of bring it in, like not an acquisition, but like an absorption. But instead of doing that, we just kind of like ignore that it's even happening. And I think that might be to like prevent copying almost, like in a kind of like ethical way. But what ends up happening is that it becomes developed in the vacuum, and then it just excludes all of that. And then it really just feels like it's like just kind of taking that business away from it. Like it's just weird to ignore it. I think it creates more tension than it might solve. And I'm not sure.
Also from like a product point of view, like because Publish Press is already really established and they've solved a lot of problems. When you build something that's similar to Publish Press, and it solves, 5% of the problems and also not in the right ways, people can see, right? Because they're like, oh, we're so used to Publish Press. Like, obviously you would do it this way. Like, why aren't you doing it? And again, like maybe you don't even, I think it'd be great to talk to Steve, but like maybe you don't even have to talk to him. Maybe you just look at the plugin and see how they're solving certain problems, right? And this is like the thing that so many people have pointed out with the block editor. Like, page builders are a solved problem, right? All the page builders look alike these days for a reason. And, one could say maybe it's because everyone's copying each other, but I like to think it's also because, there are certain UX patterns that are just common, and that's what people expect. Like people understand that when they see an X on the top right-hand corner or something, it means that they can close something, right? You don't have to reinvent that. Whereas I feel that with the block editor and with FSE, like a lot of things felt reinvented unnecessarily. And, I've seen like the number of comments I've seen on Twitter of people just saying like, if you had just copied and pasted Elementor into core, like people would have been happier.
It's true.
And like,
well, except for the performance,
like, that's all they need to do. Oh, okay, sure, yeah.
But I was like, well, we have one of those on the show, so like,
and this disability.
I use Divi all the time. I love it. It's been I was thinking about it today in anticipation of this show, like dynamic content. Why do I have to have a whole extra plugin suite for dynamic content? Like content post types have been a thing for a while. Like, so that putting that type of functionality into core is like not like saying that someone's not going to use this,
Yeah.
Putting even something like, AFC, ACF. Like, is it AFC or ACF? ACF just announced, 6.1. We talked about it a little bit on the show, where they're adding in custom taxonomies and custom post types, in order to like blend it all together. We've had CPT UI as kind of the, standard for a long time for creating that generate WP. Like we have all of these like, different tools that we use, everybody uses to create these things that could very easily be created in core that like then could be used for everybody. Like, and I think this is part of why that use case thing stands out, because are we just talking about posts? Like just you know what I mean? Like when you were saying the thing about like, what does a average website look like for, what about a small business? Like that's who I use it. Those are my clients, are small businesses and nonprofits. And like, there's always custom post types and custom taxonomy and like user taxonomy. And I feel like like even just kind of going even deeper on the post is ignoring these like basic things
Yeah.
Like
I think
custom fields.
I think it's kind of like what Lesley was saying earlier at the very beginning of the show here, is that idea of like taking stock or looking at what the functionality currently has in WordPress and making sure that we can actually do that again and continue to do it. And we've seen it time and time again where something was built and it's a really great solution for it, but then they end up not checking themselves and making sure that this functionality can continue to be used again. Something like ACF, those fields. ACF didn't build fields. Fields existed in WordPress.
Exactly.
And because those fields existed in WordPress, they should be used everywhere. And this is where the whole Divi and Beaver Builder thing comes into play. Like these folks figured that out and was like, this is going to be core piece of this technology. I need to be able to have fields show up. And they skipped it. Like it didn't even exist. And that's kind of where it comes down to like kind of reading the room. You walk into WordPress and you look around and you go, what are you guys using? And everyone's like, dude, none of us are using this. But why are you so fixated in this whole idea of doing this like real-time asynchronous, building or whatever? Like some of those things, like I would love to have that happen. That would be great. I would love to not have that thing that pops up that says, so-and-so is editing the page right now. I'm sorry, but you have to wait until they leave or their session time's out or a cookie gets blown out or whatever. Like whatever the technology is that makes that work. We like those sorts of things would be great, but there's some stuff that we just skipped entirely.
Yeah, I spend at least an hour a day in Google Docs, just like either reviewing some internal content, going through and doing this sort of stuff. And the idea of having a Google Docs-like experience for WordPress, it is like a very powerful selling point. There's not really, at least that I'm aware of, many CMSs that are trying to do something like that, trying to have this collaborative environment. And when you have a collaborative environment for content editing specifically, that's a really powerful thing. Like having also outside of just being in like Google Docs, I work on a product team and I'm in like Miro boards. I'm in things like that where you're sitting in this environment with sometimes 2 other people, sometimes 10 other people, and you're all reviewing this same thing, and somebody's off working on this thing over on the side, and you're focused on your area. And like if you ever get a chance, like while other people are working in a Miro board, like pull back and zoom out and just watch like all of the stuff that people are doing, and it's wild.
It's actually funny that you say that, because I tried to use a Miro board during a meet, like a Google Meet, and I totally failed to get it shared to anybody. I was like, Google's like, use this board. I was like, cool, we'll use a board for this meeting. And I was like, never mind. Just
when it works, it's amazing. When it doesn't, you've definitely got problems there, and it's a big problem to have to land. Lesley, in your comments when your initial comment that you put on that post, in the real-time async collaboration, identifying the types of users and use cases that people might have for this collaboration, it's a big thing. Like I said, I work on a product team, and the way when I started working on this product team, they decided like we're gonna start working in this way that's a little alien to us, and it's actually worked really well, is what you outline here. Like, let's interview these people that have these use cases and see how they're actually going to use the product. So we started talking to people and saying, hey, instead of us telling you what we're going to build and how cool would it be if we built this, and then having you go, oh yeah, that sounds great, can't wait to use it. Why don't you tell us what pain points you're running into, what you need from us, so we can build a product that people actually want to use.
Yeah.
So I want to, one thing I do want to say is that, and this is part of the weird division that I see, is that there are folks like Ann McCarthy, who's been running the full site editing outreach program, they are doing actual interviews and research. But even from the comments that I've read, they're actually interviewing editorial teams and like one area of use. And I'm not like, so media and that type of thing, which is all very, very much content focused in terms of that collaboration. But there was a comment in that thing in the comments that said, I bet there's a lot of WordPress instances that is one user, and not that this is like, is this even really solving or meeting the 80/20 criteria that is actually laid out in WordPress's ethos, that to put it in core, it needs to work for 80% of WordPress. That's like the ballpark thing. And we're only talking to a certain segment of the audience of WordPress. Like, I don't know why no one's ever talking about small businesses. Have we all just decided they're going to Shopify and it's done? Like, we've given up? I feel like small businesses are just like we're all like, oh, writers and bloggers, like whatever. I'm like, but we're all small businesses, like all of those people. You know what I mean? It's not just about content. It's about monetizing your content. It's about the membership plugins that you use. It's about, emailing out your content and that type of stuff. So are we talking to, for example, the plugin developers who run a plugin that, ships out your content, like Newsletter Glue, to all of these things? Like, what could make that work better? Or what is missing that has to have workarounds, instead of just assuming that this group of people is going to have all the information for 80% of the use cases out there, or that those specific use cases are going to have the information to meet that 80%. Like, it's just not.
How would you
want somebody think of the cat bloggers, right?
And the Fortnite streamers.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, the Fortnite streamers, I was talking about this on the pre-show. My sister's partner is a Fortnite streamer. She's kind of famous. At Jess Weymouth on all the things.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Ad. Where's that ad money?
She doesn't care. I know, right?
No.
Like, if you get any mentions, bring it over here. But is she not using a WordPress site, right? And actually, that is really an interesting market, right? The link in bio, the link tree, that market of people who are like, website, why would I even bother with all that? I've got, a list of links, which is essentially a blog roll. Like,
oh boy, here we go.
I tried to get to someone's website from their link tree, and there just wasn't one. There was no website there. So like,
because WordPress is hard.
Well, websites, we're not necessarily making them easier. Like, we're not broadening the scope of who can come into it. We're just like really drilling down on these, I think, these use cases that aren't necessarily representative of the breadth of the ecosystem. And
how would you want it to be? How would you approach that though? Like, would you want them to be like, every, I don't know, 6 months, a year, like show you, like, here are all the different types of people that are using WordPress, and like for phase 3 we're going to focus on these, like, these circles of people? Or like,
I mean, I don't necessarily, in my opinion, I don't think it's like has to be an ongoing thing. I think WordPress is 20. We do a user survey every year, but it's all about like, do you make money using WordPress? And like every year I take that survey and I'm just like, why is there nothing that like really contributes to understanding the community here? Like, we're not asking the question to get those answers. So I don't know, a comprehensive survey of the community talking about these talk about your use cases. Like, let's set some up. Do you use this use case? And get it out there to the general people who are building and, working with WordPress, the agencies, the people who set it up for all their clients, and, just get a broader perspective. And I don't think we have that. And I think that's what really spoke to me about your comments. Like, you were like,
especially
what
the
about
second
these
one?
people? What about these people? And what use cases, like, and what you said was, even if we knew what, like, where that data was coming from, are 50% of the people like using it for blogging?
Like, this one right here really got me, because I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, WordPress's admin does look dated. It does look dated. I understand. But also, WordPress's admin has a lot of issues with it if we want to make some huge changes. You're going to break a lot of stuff. I think the only thing that's probably not going to break are those, I'm not going to name any names, but those plugins where the entire screen gets overtaken by the whole screen. You boot it up into the form editor that you're going to now be able to drag and drop across the entire freaking thing. I don't know if like making changes like that in admin. I think if anything, it's going to be great to get rid of those bars up on the top, all the notices. But they're just going to find another hook to jump into, and they're just going to put that stuff in there in a different hook. It's like, I don't know, we just did weird stuff in that admin, and we allowed for a lot of people to just do very, like, I'd say even close to toxic things in the admin that just makes it very difficult for someone who's, either managing somebody else's website, their customer's website, or what have you, or the customer themselves is going to log into the website. So if we're talking about, who's making money in WordPress, I think the people that are making those plugins that are overtaking these, these things are definitely making money in WordPress. But also, I haven't seen this yet, but could you imagine if your client logged into the dashboard and there was essentially like a timer set? So after like 90 days of the website being launched, this thing pops up and says, do you need help building a website? Do you need help managing your website? And this plugin just goes and takes over the front page of the WordPress site, telling your customer, don't use these people, use this instead. And we made this one little dumb little theme or this dumb little plugin that you have installed on your website. Like, those sorts of things could happen.
Was that like if AI takes over?
No, just if somebody just had something in the dashboard that would just
like
go
and
and
hostage, like
hold it hostage.
Oh wow, I've never thought about that before.
But those sorts of things could happen because of the fact that we have allowed for such an open way of managing the dashboard. And being able to, you get people that put all sorts of weird crap over on the left-hand side of the dashboard with blinky lights. I've literally seen like marquee tag style stuff going on over there, telling you that things are happening in the dashboard and you should click on my thing. And it's like, you're not that important, man.
Well, at least you got rid of the giant cartoon heads, right?
Yes.
So I have a question though. So Lesley, you put these amazing thoughts there on the site, and there's a little bit of dialogue back and forth. How do you, like, so you are to me a use case for the community, right? Like, you are a plugin owner, you're a developer. I think you're a developer, right? Not a developer. You do whatever, plugin owner. So you are aware of the development, like updates and all of that, that part of it. So you kind of have that, use case happening. And then, you're a business owner. So you're like the money-making side of it, right? And then you're also involved in the community. You're part of the media landscape. You're talking about the community. You're involved in the ecosystem. But how do you, and individually, as someone who has a lot of thoughts about this, how do you either feel about like where your comments go in terms of feedback, or how do you then, or how do you like seek to advance those ideas? Does that make sense? Question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think like I used to get really upset, and like I used to be like really emotionally involved in this stuff and get upset when certain things happen or not happen. And I've just kind of stopped, which has been really good. So I'm a lot less involved these days. And I think that's good.
Well, I mean, it's good for you. I don't think it's good for the project. I would like to point out. I think that's what ends up happening. And I still want to hear your answer, but we lose so many good people all the time because their good ideas and their good comments are just sort of dissipated into the ether. And people feel like, well, I don't need to be bothered. I don't need to bother to give my feedback here because it's just going to evaporate. And there's, I'm wasting my emotional, mental energy and my time even bothering to give this feedback. So yeah, it is good for you. I'm glad that's good for you mentally, but it is to the loss of the community. And like, that makes me sad. Anyway. So yeah.
So I guess like I've tried to narrow my focus. So like instead of getting involved in all the WordPress drama, I just get involved in like one aspect of WordPress drama, and like,
or build a podcast around it.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Like,
or multiple podcasts.
Like kind of, yeah. So like the hill that I've decided to kind of, I'm not going to say die on, but like the thing that I've decided to focus, fight for, is this like product management thing. Just because I think it affects me directly, but it also affects everybody else who has to use WordPress and like gets frustrated every time there's an update that feels funny, I guess. Is a nice way of putting it. And so like with this, for example, I've kind of been trying to see these thoughts to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. So I've like talked about it on probably, I don't know, all sorts of places. Like I guess like the Make WordPress blog is one of them. I've like, if I can share my screen for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Possible.
Yeah, let me just turn mine off here. There you go.
Yeah, Lesley, I do see you pop up in a lot of conversations in like the post status Slack as well, especially around that stuff. I know that you've been really great, like weighing in with your thoughts there. I always when I'm pretty quiet in the post status Slack, but when I scroll through and I see one of your comments on something that's going on in the community, I'm always like, okay, like I'm gonna maybe I was skimming past some stuff that someone else said. I won't call anybody out. I'll be kind, but like I always stop and pay attention when I see that you're saying stuff. Yeah,
appreciate that.
What is this? I want to. I'm like, ooh. So I've never seen this.
This is something that I created after being grumpy and talking with Mark Zara about. So it's the same like product management problem, and we were thinking like, maybe if we kind of gave an example of what we hope to see, then people would have a more tangible understanding of what I say. Like so it's not like this crazy person in the side, over in Singapore, halfway across the world, saying like product management. And then people like mishearing and saying, project management. Oh, we have that. We're like really good at that.
We don't have that either. So, just for the record.
So like what I've been trying to do lately is like be more specific and give more examples of what I mean. And so even like, sorry, I haven't even talked about this yet, but like going back to like the Make WordPress thing, like that's why I was really, really specific with my examples. Like really spelling it out so that people could see exactly what I meant, rather than, like I could have just said, like stopped here, right? Like one thing I love to see is more use case approach versus an abstract approach, like submit comment. But that would not mean like that would mean a million different things to a million different people. But like by being more specific, then people will be like, I see what use case means, and I see how this can be helpful. And so, sorry, long prelude to this, which is we wanted to kind of explain like how it would look if we like instead of so like instead of starting out with here are the features that we're going to build, let's figure out who wants to use this, or let's figure out how we can build this, which is kind of been historically the approach, like, oh, let's build collaboration, now let's figure out what goes into it, or let's build a block editor, now let's figure out what goes into it. We thought I thought it'd be better if we had like a problem first based approach, which is a different way of saying use case based approach, right? So like figure out the problems that are occurring in the WordPress ecosystem, like what are the stumbling blocks or the obstacles or the hurdles that are either making it harder for people to grow their business or making it the reason people leave WordPress, or whatever the case, right? And then like once we have like clarity over the problem space, then it becomes a lot easier to figure out like all the different ways that we can solve it. And I feel like right now, like you and the thing is, you can see it from the way they phrase these things are phrased, right? So it's, here are the phases. We're now in the third phase. It's going to be centered around fostering seamless collaboration, right? There isn't any mention of why, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and the things that are not being said are indicative of the way that people are thinking about these things. Meaning, so sorry for all the flipping, but so if we go to Matthias's original post on thinking through the WordPress admin experience, which she wrote last year, it was very like, here are some initial ideas and like design concepts that I've come up with. They are very in the early stages. Let's kind of play around and think these things through. And that phrasing suggests that it's very feature-based approach. Let's think of these ideas. In contrast, like what I hope the posts start to sound like would be more like, after speaking to plugin developers or after speaking to XYZ, we learned that ABC was a problem, and here are some design explorations that could potentially address this problem, right? So similarly, like with phase 3 collaboration, like instead of it just being like, we're now planning its third phase and it's going to be centered around fostering seamless collaboration, I wish that it would instead say, publishers, bloggers, editors make up 60% of WordPress, and we know that all of them are using Google Docs to write and then copy and paste into WordPress. So we thought it'd be better to streamline all of that into WordPress and work together with them to figure out what that new world will look like, right? That's like such a different approach to the whole thing. And when you change your approach in that way, like everything else necessarily changes. And like the solutions or the features that you develop could have a lot of overlap with what you would do in the current way that they're planning on doing things. But everything else, like, it's like, like ask two people to draw a forest, and like, yes, they're like both drawing trees, but the way that they've done it is so completely different. And that like the paintings at the end look completely different. And I think like that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, it's really hard to kind of see. So I've been like trying to constantly point this out to people.
Yeah, I think that's also what I was talking about in terms of the sort of existing in the void, because it's almost like these features are like, so they've been, this is what we want to do. And then it's like going out to get that, get that opinion that it's like, what is it? Confirmation bias, right? I'm going to go get that and see how the people who would use this feature need to use this feature instead of even so it's even the research is feature based. Like
Yes,
it's
exactly.
it's not
It should be
research
based,
trying
right?
to it's not trying to find out the information, it's trying to address this feature. So I really that really makes a lot of sense. Also, I think you were probably going to get there, but I just wanted to say you mentioned in your use cases, you know, the idea that if everybody has 40 plugins, we should be looking at that in terms
Like
of
as a starting point,
the
right?
admin design.
Oh, that was so
Yeah,
frustrating.
and on your that design that you just showed on that Matthias was, brainstorming, there's like it's like nothing, they're like not in there. And it's like, okay, so where do all the plugins go? Are we just going to shove them into this design? And that is, I think, because they don't have the information of being able to look at all of these like monstrous installs that we've all seen in our lifetime of, like 3 slider plugins and like whatever, and the lights. Like that's a real thing that exists. And like that's a problem that we're not solving, because if you're looking at a fresh install and being like, how can I reimagine?
Anyone can design for a fresh install, right? And make it pretty.
Yeah.
That's not the reality of WordPress.
No, and that because the people who are coming up with the features and imagining how they should work are not the people using it. They are not designing from reality. Oh, that sounded really harsh. I didn't quite mean it like that. I just meant like they're not designing from, really these use cases, the multitude of the use cases, right? They're looking, because they can't. That's not a limitation of them as human beings. That's just like, it's not a character fault. It's just, if you are, a designer working on WordPress, you're not necessarily building out, looking at people's, 100 plugin sidebars. So you have to go ask, and you have to go look, and you have to go get that information so that you can have that be part of the design, like the just the design conversation at all. Otherwise, and I think this is why I keep feeling, I think we all feel this weird disconnect. Like we're having a different conversation. Like we're all over here saying, what about this stuff? And then like a lot is happening over here of the people who are really like actually making the software and making the decisions about what goes into core and what doesn't and all that. And that those folks just don't have the information. They're literally in like a vacuum.
We're on 2 different tracks.
Yeah.
We are we're going in the same direction, but we are on 2 different diverging tracks, and our destination
think that they are necessarily divergent tracks. I think we're on the same train. I just think it's more like kind of, that adage or whatever about the blind man and the elephant. Like the one blind man has the tail of the elephant, and they're like, it's a stick or whatever, and then the other one is like at the leg, and it's like, it's a tree trunk, and unless you have the perspective of the other people, you have a narrow perspective, and it just isn't the whole picture. And I feel like what you're doing and what I've seen you do in the community is be like, hey, bigger picture, let's look at, and what you're really advocating here for is a data-based approach to making those decisions, and making so that the decisions are informed by the data instead of just informed in an abstract world.
Yeah, when I was looking at the document that Lesley was kind enough to share with us here on the video component of the podcast, one of the things that I noticed and saw and really appreciated was that you have like the problem statement there, and I could see those being broken down. And as we on the product team I work on, we're really big on user stories. And for people who aren't familiar with that sort of thing, effectively, when you're building a new feature, a new product, anything that you're adding, you have a very simple, like almost a Mad Lib, if you're familiar with those. and it's as a blank type of user, I want a action, the blank, an action, so that I get blank this benefit or value. So effectively having stories and having kind of, as we kind of hinted to earlier, talking to people and the way that they're using things and the way that they're building things, having those requirements in place. So saying, as an editor, I want a way to approve posts easily so that I don't have to go into the editing interface to to actually approve a post. So what does that look like in the new admin? And you give yourself this base of a story. And as like developers who are diving in, even on these open source projects, can say, hey, I've got this idea of what my user wants and needs. And this is, of course, this is something that in WordPress, because we've been doing this for 20 years now, like, just a month shy of 20 years, it's going to take a lot to change our development practices to this. But having, folks like yourself, Lesley, and others pushing us to do this hard work, I think can only end up just being a benefit to the project.
Yeah. I think the one highlight that I want to pull in regarding what Lesley was talking about was that idea that the words that were written about collaboration were not written in a collaborative sense. They were written in a directed sense. Like they were saying, we are going to do this and we are going to end up in this situation, as if it's already been predestined. As if we've already figured it out. But the idea of not writing about collaboration in the document where the title of the blog post is about collaboration, and the words that are being said and the way that they're being described is not collaborative. It is very much so from a higher, that same hill that you don't want to die on, but looking down, this is what we're going to do.
But it's a benevolent dictatorship, say.
Yeah, it's benevolent dictatorialism. But I think there's a lot to talk about here, even in a larger sense, in terms of the community and how that what feedback means, especially how that is received
in a non-collaborative manner.
And, yeah, I mean, are you giving feedback on something that's a done deal? Are you giving feedback on something that's going to be iterated upon with your feedback and you're getting report, what does that mean for us being in this kind of collaborative community? So I would like to talk more about that in the future. Maybe we could have you on again, do another midnight episode. We're in major overtime.
Major overtime.
Can I just say one thing before we
wrap up?
So like, I guess like the way that I think about it is I wish, so like right now it seems like we're in like feature factory mode, and it's like we've like decided on the features, and now let's get feedback on the things that we've already decided to do. Whereas what I would love is if we had like a whole other section on top of that, which is like the problem, like what are the specs, what's the problem area, what's the PRD, which stands for product requirements document, like these are, and like start here. And then I'd love to see like that document exist, and then people argue about that. Because like right now we're all arguing about this, and this is too late, right? Like we've already decided what the solution is going to be, and that's too late. Like I want like a level above that, and like people arguing like, should we do collaboration? What does that look like? I don't want to do collaboration. Let's do something else instead. And like sure, we're still going to have like lots of people unhappy, but then at least now we're going to be arguing about the right thing, which is prioritization. Because like we don't even get a say in the prioritization right now. And like that, I think, is what I'd love to see. And like, if someone wins out, like there's always going to be winners and losers, whichever like section we're arguing about. But like at least this time, like it's clear, like okay, so and so won this like prioritization thing this time around, and then in the next release we can like all get to argue about the prioritization that time, right? And like we don't get to do that right now, and so that's kind of big picture what I'm trying to kind of push for.
Yeah.
I wonder if these user stories do exist, but they aren't part of the community purview, because I just wonder, because we're all over here being like, these things aren't happening, these things don't exist. And maybe they do. Maybe they're just more of an internal thing that's happening that isn't, and then that is being shared like after that process, but that process is not being shared. So, I mean, that's a possibility. I don't necessarily, I don't, it's hard. The sad thing is that we don't know, right? We're working on an open source, working in public software. And I guess I have to be like, I really don't know. There could be user stories and some data happening somewhere that is not being shared, but I'd like to assume good intent and just assume that that's not happening, and that instead we just have kind of been, so busy building the cart and running the cart and going down the hill with the cart that we haven't had time to take stock of it and revise our practices. So maybe instead of just worrying about modernizing our UI or modernizing our admin, we should also look at modernizing our software development process that we're in, like, because right now we're just like, oh, we're gonna use this old-fashioned process and then but all this modern design, and I don't think you can necessarily be modern with if we're sticking so closely to a roadmap that was developed a long time ago. Like these phases of Gutenberg, that was a while ago now. That wasn't just 5 years ago, right? I don't know how long ago it was, but
I also think it would help if I also think it would help if we did this. If we just like defined who user is, I think that would probably help out a lot too. Because I don't know who the user is in this. Like, am I the user as the person who's like using WordPress?
Right, because there's a lot of ways to use it.
You can use customer the user?
Back-end
who's
user?
Getting bombarded with pop-ups? Like, who's the user? Like, who's actually using this thing? And because like the admin is very much so, who's the user?
The admin doesn't know either.
And half the users,
I worry.
Think they're admins.
Like, right now, I feel like the admin is fairly neutral. It may be not super modern, which I don't, it gets cluttered for sure, but like, I don't know, it feels all right to me. It's not as like drag and droppy as some other things. Okay, fine. But like I tried to use Webflow the other day and I was like, this is like Adobe Photoshop from like 2004. So I don't know what modern necessarily means in terms of
Dreamweaver called.
Yeah. What? So but I think that we really need to like not just redesign it. Like it's not just a visual problem. Like that is the entirety of UI. And if exactly what you're saying, Jason, if you don't know who your user is, then how can you design a user interface or a user experience?
Yep.
And if your users, that's us, keep being like, hey,
maybe
that's not how we're using it.
Maybe we're the users, maybe we're the admins, or maybe we're the customer who thinks that they're the admin, but we just changed their role to be a little bit different. So they're not actually an admin, so they can't really see all of those things that we're hiding.
I think it's time for a little bit of a WordPress existential crisis. This actually tags in. There's actually a ticket for this in the marketing team right now. It's called "What is WordPress?" Not kidding. So I will put that in here and y'all can join that conversation because, it's not about like the deep dive here, but it is something that isn't defined right now. And it's kind of like, oh, we skipped that. We should probably get back to that.
Lesley,
Anyway.
I want to say thank you very much for hanging out with us. It's been a pleasure. There's only a few times that we've gone over, and we've essentially recorded 2 episodes. Like that. That's kind of what happened
wild.
here.
It's kind of wild.
But you know what?
Like,
you were worth it, friend. You were worth it.
Yay! Thanks for having me.
No problem.
I didn't realize these were half-an-hour episodes.
Yeah, they're half-an-hour episodes.
Well, this one wasn't.
This one was not.
It's probably a good thing you didn't realize that.
Well, thank you very much. Here is our outro.
Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, this federated thing called TIL Vids, and join us on our Discord because there's a cool channel called WP Navel Gazing that you should come talk to.